Do you have a dream about what you want to do when you grow up? Maybe you want to be a doctor, a scientist, or maybe an astronaut, or an artist, or perhaps you're not quite sure yet and you want to take your time to think about it. Hello everyone, I'm Rithwik Sai IV C from Bhadrachalam Public School. Today's story is an old Easter folktale about three trees who each have very different dreams about what they want to be when they are fully grown. But things don't always work out the way we want them to, either in stories or in life. Let's take a journey with the tale of three trees. Once upon a time, at mountain top, three little trees stood and dreamed of what they wanted to become when they grew up. The first little tree looked up at the stars and said, I want to hold treasure. I want to be covered with gold and filled with precious stones. I will be the most beautiful treasure chest in the world. The second little tree looked out at the river, twinkling by and its way to the ocean. I want to set the sail on the high seas, carrying powerful kings. I will be the strongest ship in the world. The third little tree looked down into the valley below where a man and woman were hard at work in a busy, bustling town. I don't want to leave the mountain top at all. I want to grow so tall that when people stop to look at me, they'll raise their eyes to heaven and think of God. I will be the tallest tree in the world. Years passed, and the little trees grew tall. One day, three woodcutters climbed the mountain. The first woodcutter looked at the tree and said, This tree is beautiful. It's perfect for me with a swoop of his shining axe. The first tree fell down. I shall be made into a beautiful chest. I shall hold wonderful treasure, the first tree said. The second woodcutter looked at the second tree and said, This tree is strong. It is perfect for me with a super shiny axe. The second tree, bam now. I shall sail the Montauk's thought. The second tree. I shall be a strong ship for noble kings. The third tree felt her heart sink when the last woodcutter looked her way. She stood straight and tall, the pointed briefly to heaven. But the woodcutter never even looked up. Any kind of tree will do for me, he muttered with a swoop of his shining axe. The third tree down. The first tree rejoiced when the woodcutter brought her to a carpenter's shop, but the carpenter fashioned the tree into a feed box for animals. The once beautiful tree was not covered with fold or filled with treasure. She was coated with sawdust and filled with hay for hungry farm animals. The second tree smiled with the woodcutter when the woodcutter took her to a shipyard. But no mighty ship was made that day. Instead, the one strong tree was hammered and chiseled into a simple fishing boat. She was too small and too weak to sail to an ocean or even a river. She instead was taken to a small lake. The third tree was bewildered when the woodcutter cut her into strong beams and lifted her into lumber yard. What happened? The once tall trees wondered. All I wanted was to stay on the mountain top and point to God. Many days and nights passed. The trees nearly forgot their dreams. But one night, silver starlight poured over the first tree as a young woman placed her newborn baby in the feed box. I wish I could make a cradle for him, her husband whispered. The mother squeezed his hands and smiled as the starlight shone on the smooth and the steady wood. This manager is beautiful, she said, and suddenly, the first she knew, he was holding the greatest treasure in the world. One evening, a tired traveler and his friends crowded into the old fishing boat, and traveler fell asleep as the second tree quietly sailed after to the lake. Soon a thundering and a crashing storm arose. The little star, the little tree shuddered. She knew she did not have the strength to carry so many passengers safely through the wind and the rain. The tired man awaked. He stood up, stretching out his hands, and said, "Peace!" The storm stopped as quickly as it had begun, and suddenly the secretary knew he was carrying the King of heaven and earth. One fine Friday morning, the third tree was startled when her beams were hurled away from the forgotten wooden pile. She shuddered when soldier nailed a man's hand to her as she was lifted up on the mountain top. She felt ugly and harsh and cruel. But on Sunday morning, when the sun rose, the earth trembled with joy beneath her. The third tree knew that God's love had changed everything now. Every time people saw her, she could point to them to the God, and so her dream had come true after all. Thank you.